Are you looking for inspiring conversations about faith, film, and life? You're in the right place. Here's the host who knows the right questions to ask, Father Edward Looney.
Hey everybody, it's Father Edward Looney, and I just wanted to check in with you. I know that my podcast schedule has been a little sporadic lately, no regularity. There's a few reasons for that. One of them being that I haven't had a lot of time to record interviews, to sit down and have those conversations. The last month or so has been filled with lots of different things, as you know, with the new Holy Father. And so I did some interviews about that for other podcasts. So kind of took me away from this endeavor. I've had a few different travel commitments where I had to travel somewhere in order to, either record a podcast or speak. This week, actually, I'm recording this from my hotel room in Philadelphia. Actually, later today, I'll head to Baltimore, where I'll participate in the annual meeting of the Mariological Society of Americas, which is a body of scholars about Mary from throughout the world, but principally the United States. And this year's conference is about Mary and apparitions. Many of you know apparitions is really my foray. It was my entry into the discipline of Mariology. I still write and follow various apparitions, but I do appreciate a deeper appreciation of Mariology that goes beyond Marian apparitions. But actually, I'll be giving a paper. So a paper at a conference is basically what it sounds like. You write an article for a journal, for a publication, and we gather, we read those, we solicit questions and feedback, and just have a conversation about the paper. My paper topic actually is really a lifelong curiosity being satisfied. I live in Wisconsin. You all know about Champion and that approved Marian apparition, but back in the 1950s and beyond, there was an apparition in Nisida, a so-called apparition. If you drive to La Crosse from Green Bay, you always drive through Nisida. And so, I stopped there once in my youthfulness just to explore it. And the church has always approached it with great skepticism and made statements against Nisida. So I didn't really know the story of Nisida that much, and I get asked a lot of questions about it. So I wanted to finally learn about it, read about it. Who was Marianne Van Hoof? What was the messages? And I hope that in my paper I make some sort of contribution. I don't think I just rehash what other people say. I think that I really make, I think, 3 or 4 unique contributions to Nisida, just different thoughts that I have that I've been able to put down. And, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to discussing and seeing perhaps if someone might challenge the position that I might take on something. So I'm very much looking forward to it. You could probably expect that I'll have a video recording of my talk, and I would expect that it'll get uploaded to YouTube, and I'll probably put it here on the podcast audio feed as well. So more on that to come in the future. So looking forward to that. Had a few nice days here in Philadelphia. Of course, I hadn't finished writing my paper, so I spent probably about 6 or 7 hours yesterday writing and researching and reading and all that, but was able to complete the paper, and now I just have to reread it and just see where it's at now after I've had a night to sleep on it. So it's interesting. I think about this. I gave, and this was out on the podcast feed as well, but I gave a presentation in England about the Passion of Mary in the writings of Anne Catherine Emmerich and Maria of Agreda. And interestingly enough, there, same thing. I was traveling. I And this talk, what that talk was virtual, but essentially I went to Detroit for 2 days for a project or something. And as I was in Detroit, was cooped up at the hotel, did my thing, and then cooped up at the hotel, writing, keeping writing, reading, etc. And so it's interesting. Two major papers I've given this year have been done, uh, mostly drafted in hotel rooms. So, and this is like insider baseball, I guess, into my own like intellectual writing life. But a lot of my writing takes place in coffee shops. A lot of my writing, I think back to my STL thesis. I actually went to a hotel for 2 or 3 days. Yeah, I went to a hotel in Beloit, Wisconsin. I was, and usually these things, when I write, um, it's attached to a travel for something else. So like I was in Beloit because I was in Rockford for the profession of a consecrated religious for her vows in the cloistered life. And then the other time for my thesis, STL thesis, I went to Lodge Kohler. A parishioner of mine, had a pass, and I just said, I just need to finish this paper, but I just need like a few days away where I'm secluded, and they said, hey, why don't you go to Lodge Kohler? So it's interesting. A lot of my research and writing has been done kind of getting away in hotel rooms. And even I'm thinking about some books that I have in my head that maybe I'd like to write. I need to kind of formalize agreements with publishers about them before we proceed. But um, maybe those books not only board in coffee shops, but perhaps I'll make a little pilgrimage somewhere and end up writing in the hotel. Seems like a good time, a good place that I've been able to do that. Um, yeah, so in Philadelphia, like I said, I came to Philadelphia because flights into Baltimore were super expensive and like had inconvenient times. And the other thing is I really have a great admiration for St. John Neumann, and Baltimore is only 2.5 hours from Philadelphia. And so Neumann is buried here in Philadelphia. And I was to a shrine once, and I wanted to return. And I was able to spend a good amount of time in prayer there yesterday. What was really neat, nice, there was a young man who had just been ordained to the priesthood who preached the homily and preached about his devotion to John Neumann. So I was grateful to hear about someone else's devotion, and really his devotion enriched me, I would say. It was a great witness, great priestly witness, priest to priest, of course, with the congregation. But I was able to speak with him afterwards too. I went out to lunch with a friend, and then went back to the shrine, and he was still there praying, and we were able to converse, and it was a lovely conversation that we had. The other thing I did in Philadelphia, so a bulk of my time was spent writing, but in the morning I and early afternoon went out to pray and such. I wanted to visit the cathedral, and I knew that Catherine Drexel was buried in the cathedral. I think she had a shrine, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere else, and essentially it closed, and they moved her body and everything to the cathedral. And I just wanted to pray there. And what I learned about Catherine Drexel is that I don't know much about her, but because of what I could gather just from a few things that I saw there, I'm like, I got to get to know this woman a little better. So I posted a picture on social media, and someone said she's one of the most underrated American saints. Not enough people know her story. And I'm like, yep, I'm one of them. So I really want to read something about Catherine Drexel here in the not so distant future. So we'll see what comes with that. In this podcast episode, it's a solo episode. Next week, you could expect an interview because I have one recorded. It's on friendship, an evangelical Christian that I speak with about her new book on friendship, which was just a topic that I was very delighted to speak with her about. So that's next week. You can expect that. But I wanted to do three things in this episode. I simply want to share some updates about my health. That's a question I get a lot. Secondly, I was in Charlotte to do a podcast with Conor Gallagher and just want to share some thoughts about Billy Graham. And thirdly, Pope Leo. What am I thinking? What are my hopes? Thought I'd share that too. So that's the path of our podcast solo episode today. Just an update about my health. A lot of followers from social media, you podcast followers, you will remember that I've had some ongoing heart issues due to the COVID-19 vaccine. And I didn't have the heart issue until that fateful day. There's a whole article on LifeSite News where I detailed, not I, but someone actually just kind of took a video I did and wrote a whole article about it. But with my profile on Relevant Radio back in the day, I'm still there a little bit, but not as much since they moved to Chicago. Uh, a lot of people knew because I was scheduled to do the Relevant Radio Mass the day that I had to go to the emergency room for my heart issue. So as I've traveled, as I've spoken, I've spoken in California this year. I've spoken many different places. As I travel about Wisconsin, a lot of people just pull me aside and say, like, "How's your health doing?" And I usually tell them, well, and actually sitting right here on my desk are my pills. But I'm like, well, I just take this pill every day, and it seems to keep it under control. And if I don't take the pill, I know that I haven't taken it. So that's kind of the little update there. It's pretty stable, status quo. Yeah, not nothing really to report on. I did make a few life changes, really for the sake of my health here in the last. Actually, it's been about 40 days now, according to my Fitness Pal. I've been tracking. I haven't missed a meal yet, so I've been tracking my meals on my Fitness Pal just to make me more aware of how much I ate. Admittedly, part of the COVID shot and everything, and the complications with the heart was that for 2 or 3 years, I was not able to exercise because when your resting heart rate is already at 120 or 130, exercising puts you in a very high heart rate zone. And so just really wasn't able to exercise, kind of lost that habit. I used to run a lot. I used to run half marathons and 5Ks, 10Ks. And I'd like to maybe God willing, I'll get back into that. But uh yeah, so just wasn't really able to exercise. But people who see pictures on social media, watch the videos, I think you can notice, like, I went from one way to, the heaviest weight, and that heaviest weight was actually 40 days ago, and I just had a routine doctor's visit, kind of had a talk there, and basically they said you got to do something. And yes, obese, sure. But you always look at someone else and you're like, well, I'm not as big as them, and that sin of comparison. But they really encouraged me, and this one doctor, I have to go back in 6 months, and so this time I really resolved. I'm like, I will really make this life change that they want. And I want to go back in October for that follow-up visit. And I want everything to be in the clear, and really that doctor, because I'll tell you, that doctor's bedside manner was one of the worst. Like, just the way that I was spoken to, I was really disappointed. Like, I've seen this doctor for some stomach issues for the last year or two now, uh, and she said, "Well, with your track record, we'll give you 6 months, not 3 or 4, because you'll need the time because." And I'm just like, wow, like how do you like tell someone that, you know? But maybe it was enough to startle me and jolt me into desiring that change. So a number of years ago, I did, allergy testing, and it was through the blood. And so, and this was with a doctor. This wasn't like some mail ordered test kit. This was went to the lab. They took my blood. My primary care doctor ordered it. So it's all legit. But took this allergy testing, and it really showed that I had a sensitivity to wheat, that there was a reaction, and then that I had a huge dairy reaction as well. But my primary care doctor at the time, he said to me, he said, "Well, you know, if you're okay not feeling well, you can enjoy that every now and again." And so I did. I overindulged, and it's interesting. You know, I talk about my fitness pal and tracking calories, and realizing what I'm eating today and the smaller portions that I am, and what I was eating previously. Like it's very easy to understand how you could gain 20 to 30 pounds. It's very easy to understand that I was probably some days eating 3 to 4,000 calories, just because, like eating three big full meals. And it's interesting, like without that self-awareness, all these things can creep up on you. So uh, with those allergies, what I've learned is that I was sometimes eating in a calorie deficit, and I wasn't losing weight. And what I've learned is that when your body is in inflammation, when it's constantly inflamed because you're eating wheat and dairy, you can't lose weight because of the inflammation. And so I resolved 40 days ago, because the doctor told me that like I needed to, that I was going to abide by these allergies, that I was going to go wheat free, dairy free. And, in just the 40 days, I'm down 14, 15, 16 pounds. Maybe you can see that in the face here on the video if you're watching the video. And I have a lot more to go. But it's been consistent. And, if you would have told me a few weeks ago that salads would become one of my go-to meals now, because A, I can get it dairy free and I can get it gluten or wheat free, and that I would enjoy those salads, and that I described two salads I had recently as some of the best, like the best salads I've ever had in my life. One of them is in Shawano at Stubborn Brothers. Their salad with apples and candied pecans and all that. That was delightful. And the other was in Wausau at a restaurant called Red Eye. They had some dried cherries on their salad. Just if you would have told me, 40 days ago, you're going to delight in salad. You're going to intentionally go to a restaurant to get a salad, I would have told you you're crazy. So I know that in the last 40 days, I've eaten more fruits and vegetables than ever. And there's a big difference, obviously. I've noticed too that by eating dairy-free, wheat-free, the inflammation in my stomach. So like I was always bloated, and so it goes down. That was almost instantaneous. Within the first week, I noticed that the inflammation on the stomach had decreased. What else to say about that? I also decided that I was going to kick the soda habit. So admittedly, again, I was probably drinking three Diet Cokes a day, 12 ounces. Maybe if I was driving, it was 220 ounces, in the car. It's always cheaper to get two for 450 or whatever. And so I was drinking a lot of soda. But one of the things my lab results showed was that my GFR estimate was pretty low, not dangerously low, but low for where it should be. And I thought, well, nobody told me kick soda, but I just thought to myself, I got to kick the soda, and I have to put more water through my kidneys, and hopefully that'll reverse and make this GFR estimate be better, be normal. So, um, Yeah, just if you would have told me I would be intentionally choosing to drink water, would have thought you were crazy too. It's interesting because I just think I must have been so severely dehydrated because I didn't drink a lot of water ever, and now I'm drinking more water than ever, and I notice a big difference. And with all these little changes, I noticed more energy. I'm not as lethargic, not as tired as I usually was. I would eat lunch and then typically would have to rest for a little bit but I think that was just like the exhaustion from the inflammation that was happening from eating, wheat or dairy or making those exceptions. So yeah, just very, very interesting, the path to health and I'll keep at it. I'm really, really dead set on staying on this path right now. Um, and we'll see. We'll see where 6 months brings us. We'll see what that doctor, what she says. So I just turned 36 on May 10th. So, maybe lose 36 pounds while I'm 36. I'll tell you, so this is just kind of a little byproduct too. I have been wearing my clerics more, and it's not that I didn't wear my clerics. It was just that they were a little bit uncomfortable. And so like I would typically, unbutton this and put the collar in the side, or I wouldn't be as visibly a priest because of it. And um losing those 15, 16 pounds, well, now I can put two fingers in between my neck and my shirt. They fit a lot nicer. And so I'm wearing the collar more. So it's even impacted my priestly identity in that way. So very, very interesting. I long to be able to wear my cassock to lead funeral burials, that is, or the stations, or so I'm really looking forward to maybe losing this weight and getting back into my cassock for those liturgical events, because of course the girth, I've the stomach, I've outgrown the cassock, you could say. So that's a little bit about health. On the road to healthier living, I've entrusted my healthy living to the intercession of a young girl on the path to sainthood, a young woman, actually, I should say. Um, so I am invoking her prayers um, for that. So her name being Michelle Dupont. Some of you might remember that movie that was in theaters, but with her health issues, and her cancer, just thought, she knew what it was like to be sick, and I just thought, well, I'm going to pray for the reversal of some of these things in my life, and really have yeah, rely on the prayers of that holy young lady for that. So that's updates about my health. Just real quick, want to touch on I was at the Billy Graham Library in where was I? Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was out there doing some work with tan books and just had, I was done in the morning, had the afternoon, wasn't flying out till like 5 a.m. the next morning. And I thought to myself, well, what can I do? So just kind of looked around on the internet what to do in Charlotte, North Carolina. Few different things popped up, and then I saw the Billy Graham Library, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll go there. And so I did. Took an Uber, got there, didn't know really what to expect. Billy Graham was this evangelist, this evangelical preacher, and personally, I don't think it's scandalous, a Catholic priest going to this. I don't know, maybe I'm open to correction on that, but I remember when Billy Graham died that they were playing his sermons on Sirius XM, and I kind of didn't know much about the guy. I knew who he was and whatnot, but I just wanted to listen to him preach, and I was really impressed with his preaching, the zeal, the fire that he had. Just even, like he could. He could preach. Let's just say that. And it was inspiring. And even then, I remembered that it was about the cross. That was a central thing to his preaching was the cross and, heaven, all that. So just, I think he's a great model of what it means to be an evangelist. He, alongside Fulton Sheen and some of those early media pioneers in Christian and Catholic media, he was on the radio, he was on the television. So he understood how to reach the large group of people. So I go to the library and interesting experience. You're kind of, I will say this, you are like, it's a forced experience. Uh, you think like if you go to an art museum or something, you just wander, right? You go from gallery to gallery and you wander, and you might end up in this gallery or that gallery. But imagine if you went to the art museum and they said, "Okay, now you have to spend 15 minutes in this room and you have to watch this little video about imperial art, and then these doors will open and now you'll see the next era of art." And like, they systematically take you through, and that's what they did with the Billy Graham. So it wasn't as free flowing as you would expect. Like you basically are forced to watch the videos. You're detained in these rooms. So very interesting experience in that respect. Uh, some of his quotes very very powerful. Just to see them, to encounter his words, and just to learn about his life. But kind of my big takeaway from Billy Graham was that what the evangelicals have done in the Billy Graham library, whether they realize it or not, is very similar to the expression of Catholic devotion. Okay. Uh, so, there's no statues. So, like, no statues, but there are pictures of Billy Graham everywhere. So, just as you would go to, like in Philadelphia, if they had a library to John, well, no, well, the Shrine has a museum. So, you go to the Museum of John Neumann and you see like his prayer book and all these things. Well, those are the same things the Billy Graham library has on display. So whether they realize it or not, like Billy Graham elevated to the level of saint in some respects. Like there's this cultus, if you will, of devotion. People go there because they admire him. They've been touched by his preaching. They want to hear his voice. Well, you can hear the voice of John Neumann in his writings. You can hear him challenge you, just as Billy Graham would do. So that was just like an interesting takeaway, was kind of realizing that their admiration, while they wouldn't call it like veneration or devotion to, really mirrors or images that of Catholic devotion to the saints. I had this interesting experience too. I went to the grave of Billy Graham and his wife and prayed there. I prayed my daytime prayer actually. And it's a different experience, obviously. And they had someone there who was kind of the monitoring the grave and engaged in conversation. But as people go there, there isn't this sense of we have to pray for Billy Graham because there's this belief they're already in heaven. My recommendation: pray for the dead. Pray for the dead, especially Protestants, as you pass by their cemeteries, because no one is praying for them. And so, yeah, just an interesting experience. Like I go to a grave to pray. Most people are going there just to say they saw it, and maybe they say thank God for Billy Graham. Maybe they did. But I just it was an interesting, a different type of experience for me as well. So Billy Graham, my big takeaway, very much the library is kind of like a shrine, if you will, to Billy Graham. They probably wouldn't like saying that, but that's it. So um, I was just too, as I moseyed around the place, I was struck by the open Bible. So obviously, the primacy of the word is very central to evangelicals, and um, but as I looked at the Bibles that were on display, and they were behind cases, and but often they were open to the Psalms, and a few of them were open to Psalm 23, but many of them were open to other Psalms. So I just thought that was interesting that they don't have a Protestant doesn't have the Hail Mary or some of our devotional prayers that we have, but what we have in common is we have the Psalms, and those are the prayers of David, and they are the prayers of our heart today. So I was touched. I was moved by that too. One last thing about the Pope now. Pope Leo XIV, of course, very surprised, elated by his election. Uh, whoever would have walked out on that balcony, I would have fostered a love for and would have seen as my shepherd. So I will say that. It could have been anybody. And I would have given that person the benefit of the doubt, even if ideologically they didn't agree with me. And I'm not sure if Pope Leo and I are on the same ideological path or not. I've read many quotes of his, and I believe that we are. Maybe we have a few little differences on different things, but for I would say, yeah, I very much am in line with Pope Leo, and as we watch his papacy unfold in the next year, the first year, I'm sure people have that first 100 days of Pope Leo, what he did. Looks like he's already making some pretty good and great changes. I'm appreciative of that as well. Uh, I just am approaching Pope Leo with an open mind, not to be closed-minded or have my conclusions already reached in my head, but I want to be a loyal son, I say, of Pope Leo. I want to read his homilies. I want to read his audiences. I just want to know what the Pope is saying. And yeah, just want to be a follower. We had the Good Shepherd Sunday right after his election, and he's the voice of our Good Shepherd today. And so I'm going to allow that voice to be one that I become very familiar with. I did start a Substack, so maybe some of you have seen that. It's maryandthepope.substack.com. I owe people an essay right now, especially because he was inaugurated, and at the very end, he had a quote to Our Lady, Mother of Good Counsel and Star of the Sea that he invokes. So I think it's interesting. We'll see him constantly invoking Mother of Good Counsel. This is the second or third time that he's done so. But I will be writing periodically, weekly, monthly, bi-weekly. I'll be writing essays about the quotes of Pope Francis and his Marian devotion for through that. So if you want to follow that, invite you to do so. I'm going to try to track his references to saints as well. Uh, I'll be putting out like Pope Leo's Marian litany, so I'm tracking the titles that he references and all of that. So maryandthepope.substack.com, you can find it there. Follow my writings. Also, just one closing thing about Pope Leo. You know, what I'm looking forward to is, like with Pope John Paul II, he did those Wednesday audiences on the theology of the body. Pope Benedict did the Church Fathers and did a lot of different series as well. Pope Francis did the Beatitudes, I believe. So I'm looking forward to seeing what is a theme of Pope Leo's um, Wednesday audiences. Is he going to have that? Is there going to be a big contribution, of his papacy through those audiences? And secondly, I will wait with eager expectation and anticipation his first encyclical. Here, as we approach the Feast of the Sacred Heart, what I want to do is I want to do 9 days with Delexinos, this encyclical of Pope Francis at the end of his papacy on the Sacred Heart. So I do want to like do 9 days, break it up, and maybe lead people through social media, through video, just digesting and appreciating that final encyclical of Pope Francis. But boy, I look forward to seeing what will be the first thing on the mind of Pope Leo as he writes his encyclical. So stay tuned to the rest of his papacy. Let's patiently await what will come of it. Let us just remain faithful and loyal, open to our Holy Father. I'm Father Edward Looney. You've been listening to my podcast. Hey, everybody, it's Father Edward. You can head over to Amazon, get any of my latest books, especially Places of Grace, which is my travel memoir. Maybe during the summer, you're going to be going on pilgrimage. Why not see what I have to say about some of the places I have visited, even as I'm on pilgrimage and traveling right now, always looking for that place where I can go to encounter God, to entrust my life to the intercession of Mary, to rely on the help of the saints. So, Places of Grace, encourage you to head over to Amazon, pick up your copy today, and I'll be with you next week for the podcast. So, look forward to that as well. Thanks so much for subscribing. Please rate the podcast, and we'll talk soon. God bless you.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. And don't forget to stay up to date with what Father Edward is doing by following him on Facebook, X, or Instagram at the handle @FrEdwardLooney. Thanks for listening, and please join Father Edward again next time for another inspiring conversation.